Former CIA Director George Tenet told us the war in Iraq is a national tragedy. He says he realized it was the end of his career when he picked up the Washington Post and saw that he was being blamed for the decision to go to war. In classic Washington fashion, somebody leaked a story suggesting that the president decided to attack after Tenet said the evidence against Iraq was, quote, a slam dunk. In our interview, Tenet admits the CIA's mistakes and his own. But what makes him angry now, he says, is how the White House ignored CIA warnings and then used slam dunk to brand him with the failure.
The hardest part of all this has just been listening to this for almost 3 years. Listening to the Vice President go on Meet the Press on the 5th year of 9/11, and say, well, George Tenet said slam dunk, as if he needed me to say slam dunk to go to war with Iraq. And they never let it go. I mean, I became a campaign talk. I was a talking point. Look what the idiot told us, and we decided to go to war. Well, let's not be so disingenuous. Let's stand up. This is why we did it. This is how we did it. And let's everybody tell the truth.
The truth of Iraq begins, according to Tenet, the day after the attack of September 11th, when he ran into Pentagon advisor Richard Pearl at the White House.
He said to me, Iraq has to pay a price for what happened yesterday. They bear responsibility. It's September the 12th. I've got the manifests with me that tell me that Al-Qaeda did this. Nothing in my head that says that there's any Iraqi involvement in this in any way, shape, or form. And I remember thinking to myself as I'm about to go in and brief the president, what the hell is he talking about?
You said Iraq made no sense to you in that moment. Does it make any sense to you today?
In terms of complicity with 9/11? Absolutely none. It never made any sense. We could never verify that there was any Iraqi authority, direction, and control, complicity with Al-Qaeda for 9/11 or any operational act against America. Period. The president in October of 2002, quote, we need to think about Saddam Hussein using Al-Qaeda to do his dirty work. Is that what you're telling the president? Well, we didn't believe Al-Qaeda was going to do Saddam Hussein's dirty work.
January 03, the president again, quote, imagine those 19 hijackers this time armed by Saddam Hussein. Is that what you're telling the president?
No.
The vice president upped the ante, claiming Saddam had nuclear weapons when the CIA was saying he didn't. What's happening here?
I don't know what's happening here. The intelligence community's judgment is he will not have a nuclear weapon until the year 2007, 2009.
That's not what the vice president's saying.
Well, I can't explain it.
Tenet says he sometimes warned the White House its statements were false, but he admits that he missed a big one in the 2003 State of the Union address.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
The CIA had knocked down that uranium claim months before. The agency even demanded it be taken out of 2 previous presidential speeches. How did it get through the 3rd time?
I didn't read the speech. I was involved in a bunch of other things.
Wait a minute. The President's State of the Union address?
I know this shocks and horrifies you.
You didn't read that?
I didn't. Farmed it out, got it at a principal's meeting, brought it down the hall, handed it to my executive assistant. I said, you guys go review this and come back to me if I need to do anything.
Nobody comes back to you.
And therein lies why I ultimately have to take my share of responsibility.
Did anyone at the White House, did anyone in the Defense Department ever ask you whether we should go to war in Iraq?
The discussions that are ongoing in 2002, in the spring and summer of 2002, are how you might do this, not whether you should do this.
Nobody asks.
Well, I don't remember sitting down at a principals committee meeting and everybody saying, okay, there's a deep concern about Iraq. Is this the right thing to do? What are the implications? I don't ever remember that galvanizing moment when people sit around and honestly say, is this the right thing to do?
But at CIA headquarters, Tennant's team was about to make a historic blunder of its own. The CIA produced its evaluation of Iraqi weapons of mass destruction in a secret report called a National Intelligence Estimate.
The first key judgment in the National Intelligence Estimate says, quote, Baghdad has chemical and biological weapons, period.
High confidence judgment.
How could you make such a bold statement?
We believed he had chemical and biological weapons.
But there was no hard evidence.
No, there was lots of data. There's lots of technical data. So you put all of this together and pick evidence. It's not evidence in the court of law. Remember, when you write an estimate, when you estimate, you're writing what you don't know. You might win a civil case, You're not going to win a criminal case in terms of evidence.
We are going to war. Tens of thousands of people are going to be killed.
Yeah.
And you're telling me you had evidence to prove a civil case and not a criminal case?
Hindsight is perfect. The public face on this was what we wrote on weapons of mass destruction. And for professionals who pride themselves on being right, this is a very painful experience for us.
Perhaps the most painful experience for Tennant was the presentation of Secretary of State Colin Powell to the United Nations. Powell asked Tennant to sit behind him.
Our conservative estimate is that Iraq today has a stockpile of between 100 and 500 tons of chemical weapons agent.
Conservative estimate of 100 to 500 tons?
Scott.
I mean, how can you be so wrong?
Scott, we've gone through this. It's what we believed. It's what we wrote.
Where do these numbers come from?
From our national intelligence estimate. I mean, you don't make this kind of stuff up.
Wait a minute, you did make this kind of stuff up.
No, we didn't make it up, Scott.
It's not true.
Scott, you're doing it again. You're impugning the integrity of people who make analytical judgments and make their best judgments about what they believe of the Iraqis possessed. Intelligence, my business, is not always about the truth. It's about people's best judgments about what the truth may be. We believed it. We wrote it. We let the secretary down.
These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
He didn't tell the United Nations, look, we think this might be true. This was laid out to the world as a ironclad case.
Scott,
conservative estimates between 100 and 500.
I wish I could reel the tape back. You think that the American intelligence community is going to roll out the Secretary of State in front of the entire world and consciously let him say things that are wrong? No.
Did you apologize to Colin Powell?
Well, Colin and I have talked about it. I'm not going to talk about what he and I have said to each other, but we've talked about it.